Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I wanted to do an updated uniform tier list guide. And the reason why I wanted to do it now is because we're smack dab in the middle between the 7-year anniversary that was in April when we did the first one of these, and Black Friday at the end of November in a couple of months when I will inevitably do another one. So this would be a really nice time to sort of snapshot things and see how much progression we're going to have between now and the end of November. Plus, since the last tier list, we have gotten tier 4s. That has definitely made things more difficult, and more often than not, I see people asking questions about picking up uniforms for characters that are tier 4, but they're not necessarily going to tier 4 them themselves. So as always, it's quite difficult to rank and give guides for things like uniforms because although they are a huge part of the game and they transform characters, it really depends on multiple factors here. You're talking about like how much you're going to invest in the character, right? If the character is not going to get an investment, then a lot of these rankings are going to change, right? If you're not going to tier 4 Hulk or Moon Knight or Thor, their value is going to drop at least a couple of tiers, if not more. So that's the first thing, is how much you're going to invest in the character. The second thing is, what do you need the uniform for? Again, I can't answer these questions in this video, so you have to do that work. I am just trying to give you as good of an idea as possible with just a generic mindset going in. I tried to be specific with certain things, and I'll go into more detail on them, but without further ado, let's jump right into it. So this is not an all-encompassing list. Obviously, there's tons of uniforms missing, but these are, you know, generally speaking, like the 50 best, roughly the 50 best uniforms in the game, more or less. And with these uniforms, most of them, even maybe just half or less, you can have a very competitive roster for almost all content. So it's very all-encompassing. It's not solely focused on one game mode or another. It's not solely focused on PvE or PvP. We're going to start down at the bottom here. Can't buy now, because this is definitely going to be a question that people are going to ask. Where's Storm's uniform? Where's Gwenpool's, etc.? Can't buy them. They're seasonal uniforms. They will only come back during the seasons, winter, sadly now possibly April Fools, and then summer in August, which just passed. So those are the 3 times of the year that you'll be able to see these uniforms come back. The April Fools one was just added this year, unfortunately, but yeah. Next up, we have off meta, and this one is tough because there's a lot of good characters here, and a lot of you are going to immediately draw your eyes to Black Widow and be like, Alex, hold on, she's tier 4. Isn't she meta? Are you saying Black Widow's this bad? And I'm not saying Black Widow's this bad, but I haven't yet found a place for her because although the uniform is not new, she is new as a tier 4. If she wasn't tier 4, if she was still just a level 70 character, she would absolutely be off meta. Absolutely. She would be right around here at the top of off meta, but she would be if she didn't have level 80 in tier 4. However, even the level 80 bump is not enough. So we'll have to wait and see. My guess is she's going to end up somewhere around here, just ahead of Spider-Man for PvP. But who knows, maybe she'll make a bit more of a splash in the PvE meta and she'll move up. But generally speaking, that's where I'd place her for now, just based on the little testing we've done and based on how heavy the speed meta is. Not heavy, but there's just better options available for most content, and you know, just sort of pushes her out. But we'll have to wait and see. Who knows, she might take over Makari for ABX. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, the rest of the off meta, these are not bad characters by any means, but they're just a step or two behind everyone else on the list. Now, there are certain exceptions to this. Of course, if you have an absolutely stacked, brilliant Judgment Luna and you've got the 6-star artifact and you've got cold resist on your cards and you're a massive whale, like, yeah, you can make it work for specific World Boss Legend stages. But for the vast majority of players, Luna is just not as good as she used to be. She'll eventually get a uniform, she'll eventually come back to the meta, but there are just better, easier to play, you know, tankier options. You know, Kamala just is a better version of Luna in almost all pieces of content. Makari literally is, and so yeah. But that being said, that's how the off meta sort of shakes out, and most of these uniforms should eventually rotate down to off meta. It's not a bad place to be. It's sort of like the retirement home for uniforms that are either older or older but still meta-ish, or they're just not that good for their time. Like Blade's uniform was good, but there's just a lot better combat type, so he just gets pushed down. As far as the support meta goes, it's very straightforward. You have support type characters. The one that I want to highlight here the most right now is Echo. Her value continues to increase as we see new speed types coming out that she can be a leadership for. She's a great leadership for Kamala. She's always been a good leadership for other characters, but as we see more PvP speed types, that leadership continues to creep up. 60% attack and 60% defense, and the debuff immunity is a lot. Plus the other things she gives with ignore, dodge, etc. Very, very strong passive and stuff. Not going to lose value anytime soon. Plus, for Black Widow, it's necessary for PvE. So yeah, that's that sort of goes without saying. It's kind of sad, but it is the way that it is. As far as the one-trick pony goes, this sounds like a negative. It sounds like a downside, but it's not. These are characters that are very, very good, but at this point, they're only very, very good for one game mode. Now, there are some exceptions to this, and what I want to give you as well is the advice that, by and large, there's a couple of factors you want to consider, but by and large, characters that have support or leadership qualities in addition to being up here at the top will tend to have more value longer term. So even if Green Goblin, for example, gets replaced by a tier 3 villain, which is definitely possible for ABX and definitely possible for squad battle, he's still going to retain a lot of his own value. Not that he'll be meta, but he could still retain a lot of his value on this list because of the leadership and because of the passive support. Same thing goes for characters like Titania, Jane Foster, etc. So that is something to consider and keep in mind for these uniforms. Another thing to keep in mind is universals tend to last a lot longer in the meta, and those uniforms tend to give you more value over time. There are fewer universals, and universals just tend to get upgraded less frequently than other types. And there's also fewer villains as well, so then universal villains become even more valuable. So as you can see here, we have very few universal villains, but the ones that we do have are all sort of concentrated in the upper middle part of this tier list: Thanos, Supergiant, Ultron, and Doom. That's not a coincidence. That's just because there's so few of them that they don't have enough gravity to push each other away and knock each other down to the bottom of the list. Meanwhile, you can pretty much find every other type of character, both female, male, villain, hero, all other types besides universal. And actually, we only have two universal characters in off meta: Silver Surfer and Ghost Rider. That just goes to show you how strong the class is, the typing is overall. But yeah, a lot of characters have been moved down from meta to one-trick pony. So I just want to highlight here, Supergiant at this point, you're mostly just using her for ABX. She does have some other value, but again, you're looking at an extremely stacked build. Thena, been replaced by and large by Scarlet Witch. So again, you could use Thena for World Boss Legend. You can use her for ABX, but there are better options. You can use her for GBR, but again, there are better options. Shang-Chi, again, great combat type, difficult to play. Yeah, just been pushed down by stronger, better combat types, and sort of the list goes on. Doom is definitely losing his value in PvP. You see fewer and fewer Dooms, and generally speaking, those teams do worse unless there's a lot of bans. Like Adam is banned, Thanos is banned, tons, right? Just Doom doesn't have the gas to keep up with these two insane meta characters. You do have Juggernaut and Absorbing Man, who some people might say deserve to be stronger. Like, oh yeah, they're definitely meta because you need them for this switch play ABX team. Well, that's basically the only thing you're going to see them used for besides Alliance Conquest, and they don't work without Titania. So in my opinion, if the characters don't work without another better character there, then those characters aren't meta, in my opinion. They serve a complementary role, and that's why I gave them the one-trick pony tag, but that doesn't mean that they are meta. Who is meta, though, is Titania. She's absolutely nuts, and the introduction of Blue Dragon and then Black Widow certainly didn't do anything to devalue Titania. She's very, very good in a lot of different content, and she's quite easy to play and easy to gear. The rest of the list is pretty straightforward. Loki loses a few points for being replaced by and large by Thor for a lot of farming, so he could honestly drop a little bit here. He's holding on because of his overwhelming ABX value, but yeah, Thor, even at level 80 before tier 4, does as good, if not a better job of farming content, and you don't have to switch leaderships and do all this kind of funky, annoying stuff. You don't need to go for expensive characters like Black Cat's seasonal uniform plus the artifact. You can build him out with much more accessible supports like Valkyrie and White Fox, even with the crystal uniform, so he does lose some value there. And then for the uber meta here, I said it at the beginning of the video, but it begs repeating. This ranking here is only this way because I'm assuming you're taking these characters to tier 4. If you're buying these uniforms for these characters, you cannot necessarily assume that they'll still be here if they're not tier 4. At level 80, you're still going to get really good production out of these two, out of Iron Man and Thor, so I would probably still leave them here. Hulk is maybe the last one along with Moon Knight, but Blue Dragon definitely loses a lot of points. At level 80, she probably gets dropped down to here. So again, just the uniform alone in level 80 is not enough to carry all of these characters, and frankly, level 80 alone doesn't even put Black Widow in the conversation. Like, Black Widow level 80, okay, let me just put it this way. If this is the list, assuming that you have if this is the list, assuming that you have all of these characters maxed out, then now let me reshuffle the list live, assuming that you have all of these characters at level 70 or at level 80. So we'll go as far as level 80 now, but we will not go to tier 4. So I do still think that Iron Man is the best, especially because he has those two different uniforms, Superior Iron Man and the other one. And honestly, I should bring the icon for Superior Iron Man and put it here as well, because both uniforms are extremely valuable to turn him into a villain. I do still think Thor is really good. Honestly, I think Hulk takes a hit at level 80. I think a lot of people don't agree with me on this, but I do think he does, because he doesn't have nearly as much PvP presence as tier 4. He really just has the limited PvE presence, and that's more about just the limited number of good combat types, good, durable types, or whatever his other ability is, and then good villains. That's not really, yeah, he does some high World Boss Legend stages, but that is honestly about it. Moon Knight still carries quite hard for ABX and World Boss Legend, so I feel comfortable leaving him here. And then Blue Dragon honestly kind of stinks at level 80. I'm really disappointed, so I would honestly put her here. And then Black Widow I think is even worse, so I would honestly put her somewhere around here. So yeah, that's how the list would shake out if I had all these characters at level 80 rather than tier 4. And then of course, this is how it would look if you then went ahead and got those characters to tier 4. Of course, Black Widow being the one that I'm sort of guessing on based on her uniform. But yeah, hopefully this list helps you out. Keep in mind that for Loki, you can go President Loki for more defenses and healing for World Boss Legend, or you can stick with TVA Loki for ABX, which by and large is the better option. Otherwise, yeah, you don't need to buy every uniform. Don't feel FOMO and don't feel like you have to own all of these, and just make sure that you're focusing or sort of, majority of your building is going into the top end of these characters, and you're picking and choosing and you're balancing the typings, because at any point in time, a new tier 4 can come around and replace one of these characters. So with that in mind, hopefully this helps. Thanks so much for watching. Smash the like button, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.